Hello class, welcome back. Actually, I'm gonna let you in on a secret. Each time I hit record on one of my videos, I go down here to make sure that it's recording right here, because one time I was actually recording this 30-minute video. I thought I was recording it, and then at the end I went to check and I found out that I actually hit the wrong button to record, and I was like so angry, and I was like, literally, I've been traumatized since then. Each time I have to double check that I'm recording and then just edit it out so that you don't see it. Just thought that you should know that. Alright, so one thing that I actually wanted to mention is there's a GitHub repository, which is linked in the description, if I can talk, that has all the code for the series, and it has like a branch for each class or each video. And if you want to go, let's say you're on video 3 and you're stuck there, you can go to branch class 3 and just clone that and compare your code against mine and make sure you can find where you made like a typo or something like that. Just saying. All right, so in the last video we did the register we did the register mutation, and now we're gonna do the login. All right, let's get to it. Okay, so let's go back to VS Code, and I'm gonna start, where do we start? Yeah, so the type definitions, let's go to type defs, and here in the query I'm gonna add another type, call it login, and this of course takes a username. I mean, not of course, you could take an email, but I'm gonna use the username for this app, and that would be a string, and that's required, and as well a password, and that's a string and is required as well. And the return type will be a user, and exclamation mark for required. All right, let's save that. Actually adds a comma, didn't know that. Cool. Let's go to our resolvers and write the resolver that does this. So scroll a bit up here. Here in the query underneath this get users, say login, and this will be an async resolver. And I'm gonna take the parent and the args, because we're gonna need to access the arguments from here. Actually, I'm just gonna, this is one thing that you can do. You can just give it like an underscore, and usually I think VS Code will not complain if it's not used. Okay, so we have args. So now what we need to do is we need to extract the username and the password from the arguments, fetch the user from the database, and then if they do exist, compare the password and log the user in. Okay, so first thing is we need to extract the arguments. So we'll say, let's destructure them as say const username and password equal args, like this. Say try catch, because we're gonna do some async stuff that could fail, catch error, and here we need to fetch the user. So let's say const user equals await user, the user model with uppercase, dot find one, and the condition, we need to pass it a where clause, and the condition will be that the username is equal to this username, so we can leave it like that. Now what we need to do is we need to check if the user exists, or actually if the user doesn't exist. So if not user, now we need to throw an error. So let's let's create our errors object. So let's say errors, let errors equals empty object, and if no user, we'll say errors dot username equals user not found, like this, and let's throw new user input error, and the message will be, let's just say user not found. We don't have to return a user-friendly message here because this will not be used on our client, and this API will only be consumed by our client, so we know how to handle it. And here we just pass the errors like that. And one key difference, if you've noticed, is that here we're actually throwing the error straight away, instead of throwing the errors object that we did here, and then actually just saying, instantiating the actual errors instance from here. Because here we might be throwing a different type of error, which we'll get to later. So here, of course, in the catch block, let's console log. So console.log the error, just to see it. And let's throw it. So throw error like that. Now, if the user is found, now we need to actually check if the password matches. So for this, we're going to use bcrypt again. So we'll say const correct password, which is going to be a boolean. equals, and this will be an async function as well, so async b crypt dot compare. So this will take the password that was passed from the arguments, and the second argument will be the user password from the user object itself. So here, by the way, the user model has the password, but when we return it, it doesn't expose it because the GraphQL schema itself doesn't expose it, so you don't have to worry about that. So now we're gonna check if not correct password, then of course we need to return an error saying that, you know, this is invalid. So we'll say errors.password equals password is incorrect, and here we'll throw a new user input error, and this will have a message. We'll say password is incorrect, and actually we could throw an authentication error because like usually it could be a 401 if you're doing like a normal REST API. Let's actually import that anyway. Let's do that. So here we can import from Apollo something called authentication error. It's just a different type of error, authentication error, and here we'll pass the errors object like we did here. So we can actually test this now. What we can do for now, we can just return the user in case none of these errors occur. Let me double check if I have any user. Oh no, I opened the wrong one. Oops, command line. Okay, so I'm gonna type my password and gonna use that database. Chat, not you, go away. Oh, no. Okay, close this. So here I'll say select star from users, just to make sure I have a user. Yeah, I have a bunch of them. Okay, so we can actually test it. So open the terminal and run npm run dev if you haven't run it already. Alright, let's close that. I'm gonna go back to Chrome. Just gonna refresh this. Here I'll use the login. And by the way, you can have multiple operations just like this. So we'll say query login, and this will be the login query, which takes a username, and that would be John, and the password. Let's give it the password of John, which is 136, and this requires us to take something from the returned user type. So let's say username. Now when you have multiple operations, you have to name them, so I'll name this register. And you can click here to select which one you want to execute, or you can, while your cursor is in one of them, you can just hit Control Enter and you will execute that one. Alright, so I cannot return null for non-nullable field login. Oh, because I didn't save, my bad. Alright, let's go, let's try that again. There we go, so we get the user, so that was successful. Let's try with the wrong password. Cool, password is incorrect. And well, if we try with empty values, it's going to say user is not found, so that's not the correct behavior. So we need to actually do some validation. I forgot about that. So here, after we declare the errors, inside the try catch block, so that we were able to throw errors, we'll say if username dot trim equals empty string, we'll say errors dot username equals username must not be empty. And I'm just going to repeat this one more time, and this will be the password. So Control D twice and say password, and we don't trim the password because the user can have like I don't know, a password that starts with an empty space, so we don't want to trim the password itself. So here, if the password is empty, we'll say password is must not be empty. And of course here we can check for errors because there might be errors, so we can say if or actually, to be more concise, what we can do is, yeah, so we added these errors, right? And then we're checking for the user here. So instead, what we can do is we can just add this error like that, and then here we'll check if the errors is not empty. So we'll say if object.keys errors dot length is bigger than 0, then we actually throw a new user input error, and that will handle that. So let's save. Let's go back to Chrome, execute that. Still says user not found. Ooh. Okay, why is that? Oh, okay, actually no, we can't do that, because if we go beyond this point, even though there's like a username must not be empty, then it will still check for the user with an empty string, because I should throw it. Okay, all right, so my idea was wrong, guys, sorry. We have to throw the errors here. All right, so I'm just gonna copy and paste that there, and then just copy this and paste it again here, and ignore that. That was like a bad programming. All right, let's go back here, execute this, and there we go. So okay, the error is still username not found because that's wrong. We can just here, let's just say bad input, save, go back, execute this. There we go. We get bad input, and we get username must not be empty in the errors object. And here as well, if this is empty, we get that. And of course, this is not being trimmed. So if it's like a long empty string or something that has like empty space, it will still like try to find a user with that password. All right, so validation is sorted. Now what we need to do for our user is the way our user will request data in subsequent requests later is that after they log in, they're going to get a JSON web token. So if you're not familiar with JSON web tokens, they're like this encoded piece of data that holds something, and then we sign it with a specific signature on our server, so that when the user requests something that you need to be authenticated to get, we take that token from the request, and then our server can check against that signature to make sure that this token was actually issued by our server and it's actually still valid. And you'll get to see all of this in a second. So we need to install this dependency, JSON web token, so we can just copy that. Let's go back to our app. I'm going to open a new terminal and paste that, let that install, close the terminal, and I'm going to import it here at the top. Say const, say JWT equals require JSON web token, and here in the documentation it has an example. Where is it? So we need the one with the expiry. Okay, so there's this will do. Okay, let's copy this, and here if we reach this place here in the block, that means the user is actually it's valid, the correct the password is correct, so we need to issue a token and send it back. So here we can say const token equals we'll use the JWT package. Actually, let's paste what we copied, so paste that. And we need to say await, because this is, wait, is it an asynchronous? No, it's not actually asynchronous. No, it returns a string, so we don't need to add await. So jwt.sign, and for the data, I'm gonna add the username, and we can just do this, that will do. The username itself, ooh, I messed up, username. And I'll show you later why we need to encode the username inside the token. Now the secret has to be unique to our application, so we can just say like some, I don't know, we could just put some gibberish, because this is what determines that this is if it's our signature or someone else's. And here expires in, this is like an expiry time for this token. So if it's been more than a certain amount of time, it's going to expire, and it's not going to be valid for it to be authenticated. And you can pass it as a string and say 1h like this, which is 1 hour, which is the standard. Or you can leave it as it is, like 60 minutes times 60 seconds, and that will do. Now we need to add this token to our response, and the way we can do that, we can actually we need to go to the type defs, and in the type user we can add the token field, which will be a string, but it's not required because in other places you can return the user without the token, so it's not required. So let's save that, and here we can simply say user.token and just append it equals token, and just return the user, and that should work. So let's save that and go to Chrome, go back to our playground, put valid credentials, so John and 1 through 6 for me, and control, okay, we need to add the token like that. And there we go. So we get our generated token, and of course each time you execute it, you're gonna get a different one. Okay, so that works. One thing that we need to do is obviously the secret needs to be stored somewhere where you can't have access to it in the Git repository itself. So I'm gonna cut that, and I'm gonna call this a constant name of JWT secret, and usually you would store these in an environment variable. So I'm gonna create inside the config directory, I'm gonna create an env.json. Bear in mind, by the way, that this directory is ignored, so you need to create your own. If you're pulling the code from the GitHub, you have to actually populate these again, because these are like have security credentials which shouldn't be pushed to a Git repo. All right, so here we'll have our JWT secret, and we can put a string and paste it like that in this JSON, save it, and here we can import that. So let's say const destructure JWT secret equals require, we go back one level and we go into config/env, just like that. Let's go down here, so that should work the same way, and yeah, that should work the same way. So let's save and test it, and it does. Cool. All right, so one other thing, actually, I want to add the created at of the user in case I'm not going to use it in this app, but for example, if you wanted to show a user profile and show, for example, they joined since this time, you need to have access to that created at. So let's go back here. In our type definitions for the user, let's add here a created at, and it's a string and it's required. And okay, so this is already in our data model, so we don't need to generate anything, so we can actually just leave it as it is, and that should work. Let's execute it. Oh, actually we need to actually add it here. There we go, we get it, but we get it as a time from epoch. I actually don't know why GraphQL always changes the SQL date time object and or value and makes it into a time from epoch string. But I'm gonna override that behavior and change it. So here, instead of returning the user, let's return an object, and here we'll spread the user. Or actually, we can't spread the user because remember, like I said, if you return the user, it's gonna call it to JSON. But if you do anything else, you have to call it to JSON yourself. So let's say user.toJSON, which will get us the JSON object that represents the fields of the user. And we're gonna override the created at. So created at, we're gonna change the value of it, and it will be user.created at dot, and we're gonna send it as an ISO string. So we'll say dot to ISO string like that as a function, because that's what it is. And here we'll add the token. Oh, actually, yeah, we can add the token like that and just remove this line and save. Go back here, execute that, and there we go. We get this. I think it's better to do it on the server because later you're gonna perform that that conversion or that changing to an ISO string on your client. It's always better to do all the computation on your server, even though it's like for silly stuff like this. All right, so one other thing I actually want to do is to show you what these JWT tokens do is we need to actually send them and interact with them. Now we need to change this get users query, because right now it's just returning all the users and it's returning them to anyone that requests it from the API, which is obviously like a massive no-no. All right, so what we need to do here, we need to check, we need to get the token from the request. And the way we're going to send the token, if let's go back to Chrome. Here I'm going to write that query, the get users query again. So let's go down here, say query get users, and this will be get users, and it doesn't take anything, so just open curly braces, and we can put username, email, created at, and we can put token, but it's not going to give us any token because obviously that only comes from the login resolver itself. So here, if we request the get users, it returns all the users, which is obviously not the intended behavior, but we'll fix it. So we can go down here, either like expand this up or double click HTTP headers. And we're going to send the token just like we do with normal REST APIs. And if you're not familiar with it, we just send like an array of headers or object of headers. And our header of choice will be authorization. So type authorization with uppercase A. And here the value, the the convention is bearer space and then you put the token. So let's actually generate the token. So let's log in, copy that and paste it here. And of course now it's not going to do anything because we're not handling it. So let's do that. So we can go to the server. You can go to actually Apollo server to look at the documentation. Down here, API reference, yeah, Apollo server. And of course, it's going to tell you about type defs and resolvers. We know what those do. And now we have the context, which is the this thing that is in every request. Every request has a context and it holds like some metadata about the request itself and about the response that will be sent back. And it's actually different for each different integration, but this is a different topic. So for Express, we're going to get the request and response, which is kind of like how you do with regular Express things. Oh, well, did I tell you that it runs an Express server in the background, by the way? All right. Wait, actually, no, I lied. The normal implementation doesn't run Express server. The other one does. Ignore that. All right. So here we can actually specify a context. So inside the server, the Apollo server instance, we can say context. And this will look weird, but bear with me. So we'll say context and arrow, it returns the context itself. Now, what I find strange is that if you don't include this context, it doesn't include the context, but if you do like this, it's going to include it. But hey, the different frameworks, hey? All right, so after we do this, we're going to have access to this context object. So if we go to our resolver, and here in our get users, there's just console log out for now. It's just console log. And to have access to it, actually, we need to say, okay, let's say parents, args, or let's just do like underscores because we're not going to use them. So underscore, double underscore, and then context. And here, let's console log the context, see what that gives us. Open the terminal, make that huge, close this, go back here, let's execute this. And here, there we go, we get to this massive object that has so many like different things, and that includes actually I'm just gonna console log the request because the response has a lot of junk that we don't need. And here let's do console log context.request. Just gonna clear this and run the server again, execute this, and there we go. So we get a bunch of stuff. One of them is the query string itself. And you notice it's exactly the same as this. And here we get the operation name that we executed, which is get users, and some other metadata. And what we're interested in is the headers, which should be, where is it? Okay, this is the raw headers, and there's another one. Yeah, okay, so we have headers here. There's a bunch of like automatically added headers, ignore those. And there's our header that we actually just added, the authorization one. So we need to access this, get this token, and extract the user from that token. So, why did I stop the server? No, I didn't. Okay. So the way we can do this, here in our get users resolver, we can remove that console log. And let's check for that header. So say if context.request.headers.authorization. Actually, let's check for the request object itself, just to have like a very safe if statement. And so we say if context.request and we have the authorization header, then let's extract the token. So let's say const token equals, now because the token is inside of this string bearer space the token, we need to remove this this bearer space. And so let's do, actually let's take this, all of that, paste that, and then we can say call the split, and split by bearer space with a capital B, and then this will give us two elements, and then take the second one. So the first one will be this, and the second one will be the rest, which will be the token itself. So now this is the token, so we need to use the JSON Web Token library again to verify that this is our token. So for that we need to say JWT.verify, and we'll pass it this token that we extracted. And we need to pass it our secret, which is kind of like our signature, to make sure that it was issued by our server. And this will have a callback, which will have an error and a decoded token. Is it options? No, it's decoded token. I don't know why it's showing me like the arguments for the verify itself and not for the callback. Maybe that's how the thing works. All right, so decoded token let's do error like this. Let's check for in case there is an error. So if there is, if it's not verified, that means this is either expired or this is not issued by our server. So we can just say if error throw new authentication error. Actually, do we need to be? Actually, no, it's fine. Throw new authentication error, and that will say unauthenticated. And if not, we can just carry on, and actually we need to create a user object that we're gonna access later. So here, outside of everything, we'll say let user, and here if we get a user, we'll say user equals this decoded token, and which will include exactly what we encoded inside of it, which is this right here, just an object with the username of the user. And let's console log it to make sure that's actually working. So say console log user, and we just carry on doing the same for now. So save that, and I removed the other context console logs, so this should work. So let's execute that, and let's go back to our console, make that big, scroll all the way down. There we go. We actually get some other stuff like expiry time and issue time. We'll ignore those for now. And there we go. We get the username John. And if we, sabotage this, like change this, make it a not valid token, and we send the request again, it will say unauthenticated, and of course the object will not exist. So we get the unauthenticated error, and yeah, we don't even proceed with creating the user object, so that's fine. All right, so that's working. Okay, this is not supposed to carry on and execute that query. Okay, yeah, I knew I made that mistake. I don't know why I actually kept typing that. Let's cut all of this. We need to put it inside the try catch block, because if this fails, we don't want to proceed and actually find the users. So this should work. So yeah, we get our user. Yeah, this should work. So just save and execute that. Make sure that. Oh, okay. Unable field. Oh, it's probably because we're not throwing the error. So here inside the catch block, let's just throw the error, and let's go back, execute that. Cool. All right, so we get unauthenticated, and then when that happens, we don't actually proceed by executing this SQL query because this failed. All right, so that's the intended behavior for this. And one other thing actually I'm gonna add here. Okay, let's remove this console log, and let's make it be successful. So I'm gonna cancel what I changed here. So that's a valid token now. Execute it, we get the users. So checking for the token and getting the user from it works. But what I want to change here is that when you go into a chat app and you get all the users that you're connected to, you don't get your own. So we need to remove whoever is logged in from this array. And we can do that by actually adding that to the SQL query. So I'm going to use some SQL operators. You can find this in the documentation, but I'm just going to import it. So let's say here const op like this equals require. Actually, I'm just going to show you why not. So here, if you go to the v6 documentation and go to, should be in model basics, and actually model querying. Yeah, model querying. And go here, operators. There we go. So you get all the operators that you have in SQL, but the wrapper of that SQLize provides. So the one we're interested in would be this one right here, op.ne, which is like, it means like it doesn't equal this value. I'll show you why we need that one. So here we'll say require SQLize. And here, when we find the users, we need to add a condition. So let's add an object with a key where. And here we need to add the attribute that we need to put a condition on, and that attribute is username, and our condition would be another object. And let's paste that operator. So op.not equal, and it shouldn't be equal to the username that we actually no, not the username, the user.username. So because it's inside the user object, so this will get all the users except our own authenticated user. So save that. Go back to the playground, execute that, and there we go. So it gets like just gibberish user, Jane and Janes, and whoever is like signed up. So if we create another user, another gibberish user, because why not? So register them, go to get users. There we go. So we get them as well, but we don't get our own. All right. So actually, this is still being returned like this because that's not included. Changing the created at is not included in the get users, but we'll do that in another video. This one is getting really long and overwhelming as well. All right, so thanks for watching, and check out the Git repo if you get stuck. Post your comments if you get stuck with anything. I'll try to help with what I can. Join the Discord server. Actually, if you have any problem or question, you can ask it there. Maybe someone else from the channel can help you. And of course, like, subscribe, press all the buttons. You know what to do. All right, so I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.